All right, so here we are in week 10 of Foundations. We are going to talk about vector designs and vinyl cutting. And we're excited to be back in the space and back from the Turkey weekend. And we have a few important things to announce, but a big one is this person who's here over my shoulder, and we're going to cut to Steve. Steve is joining us. Ileana was great, and we're sort of rotating through co-instructors so that we get as many people involved with this entire program as we can. And so Steve can introduce himself very briefly. We have this little pass-around microphone, but I'm excited. Steve has been doing this for a long time and is a real pro in all of the different things that we're about to have in this section of Foundations. So if you want to introduce yourself.
I'm Stephen.
Can you hear us now? Okay, great. All right, never mind. Then we'll just stick to this one mic again. Good. So Steve has been here, to summarize, been here just in 2016, knows all the machines, and is a delight to summarize. So let's hop into the slides for this week. We're going to take a look. There's lots of pictures in these particular slides. We've got lots of things to look at while talking about vector design in the vinyl cutter. And so I'm very excited to get into this. This is a fun part. I feel like especially the stickers get used here in interesting ways, but I think that they're a fantastic intro to all of the other vector design work that comes along down the line. So we're going to go through a whole series of vector design topics, some of which we sort of touched on at the very first week of our time together. We'll revisit raster and vector. I've got a short video segment that really, I think, nicely summarizes some things. Then there's some design software options that we can look at. We talked about a bit before. Vector design concepts, vectors as tool paths, instead of last time we talked about them just for sort of images as a piece. Then we're going to look at designing for vinyl, how you can do it with a pen, and then how does this translate to other machines like the water jet, which we don't really have a week on. We don't want to make everybody do the water jet, but it's a fun one if you want to play with it. So in here for raster and vector, just to cover this idea, we definitely talked about it, but I love this little video. I really hope that the desktop audio comes through. I'm going to try and get this to work with my desktop audio. We'll try this. See if it comes through for the people who are playing along at home. I'm going to monitor the chat. Okay, well, I'm going to let the video play and just talk over it because I am only sort of good at Zoom. Yep, no sound. Sorry. So in here, there is, so for raster, that's when you have pixels drawn across the screen, and vector is the other style where it's drawing directly. And so these lines coming across, it's from the Latin word rastrum, which is literally to rake. So you'd rake your picture across the screen and you'd have a beam that's tracked across it over time, drawing pixel by pixel your picture. So for Space Invaders, you'd have these little characters that definitely show up, and they'd come in through that sort of a piece where you'd have that. Whereas vector, you're directly drawing the lines. They did this sort of a thing in oscilloscopes, where oscilloscopes would be able to draw. And so some old-time video games would draw completely in their vector space. And so within that vector space, you'd have direct drawing of the shapes. So you get these interesting and smooth shapes that show up, versus raster video games where you'd have almost the same idea. And so in the vector space, you'd have really smooth shapes, and then Star Cruiser is one that's all pixelated. So you can see the pixels needing to sort of get wonky as you rotate. For Quantum, you'd still have those smooth shapes, but basically you couldn't get all of the different details to work. It was a lot harder for that sort of a thing to happen for this, because you're having a hard time. But when you get, sorry, I'm thinking about audio at the same instant. But when you're looking at it for like Dig Dug, there was the example that they had. When you're looking at games like this, or any of these that follow along later, they're just going through a whole series of games. These games, by raking in and filling in all the pixels, you can make really good images. It was just at that early moment where it was about equal effort to draw the pixels versus plot the vectors, where it really had an overlap in arcades. So only early games By the time you get to later game graphics, which is what they're going to go through here, and there's some crazy game graphics, like that was an arcade game, and here's other games. These are all raster images. At some point you transition into that space. So just thinking about images that way for vector or raster, skipping on through, we want to still remember that there's different file types. So your SVGs, those are your vector files that are directly describing geometry. And so you can see here, there's even a path with some points for that path and it's drawing, versus vector rasters. The rasters over here, you have to draw in the color for each pixel. So your design software options, we went through some of these. There's lots of options. Many of you might be familiar in Illustrator or Corel Draw. Those are really nice software. Illustrator is real expensive. Inkscape is the one that we like. It's free. I've been using it since I moved to MakeHaven, and really only since then. And I've gotten a lot better at it over time. So you get better with practice. It does take a little bit of adjustment, but you can get there. So the big concepts that we want to go over is that they're not photos. We did talk about this, that little egg is sort of a vector shape, and you can manipulate its boundaries, its borders, and all of that sort of stuff can be sort of squished around in a way that's not the same as pictures. And so that's really a key feature, that you get information, you have properties, you're describing it in a different way that isn't just a picture, and that they're scalable. That's a big feature. This is a vinyl sticker that was also printed out at many different sizes. So there's that. One thing we didn't really talk about, though, is that fonts and letters are also vectors. So anytime that you're using a typeface, that's a vector space, because you want your letters to be as big or as small as you need to. And if you're ever wondering, or if you ever have a graphic or a text and you're not sure, you just hit Control+, Control-. There's a couple that are very raster-like, where when they get bigger, they get weirder. But they should all modern fonts are vectors. And so they're just described, even if they're very complicated shapes, they're described so you can zoom in as much as you want. And so you can totally play with that just to see different letters do strange things. But if we're describing vectors, there's a file standard, and that's the SVG is the standard that we're going to stick to across the board. SVGs are the one file type that really all of our different softwares output. Adobe Illustrator does have its .ai file type extension. Corel Draw is, I think, CDR for its file type extension. But Inkscape stays true to the SVG standard for the internet. And so all three of them can output to that. And when you have the SVG standard, there's only really these shapes that you can have down here: circles, ellipses, lines, meshes, paths, polygons, polylines, and rectangles. And there's just one of those that really does all of our tool path work, and it's in the name. We want to just think about paths for our objects. So when if you build a shape and it's all made out of circles or squares, rectangles, you could have a shape that's described by circles or ellipses or rectangles. Your code is actually a little bit more concise if it is, but in order to run a tool, you want to have it follow the path of that shape. So you always need to go object to path. And this is an option that exists inside of Inkscape, where you go to path and then object to path. And it feels a little odd. We're going to play with the laser and the vinyl cut over the next couple of weeks. And so you might need to do this where you do object to path, but what that's really doing is it's making sure that all your vectors are described by that one shape property path. And it makes a route for the tool to actually follow, which is an important but subtle point. If you're still playing in Inkscape, there's all these sorts of interesting tools that you can use where you start to think about the borders of your shapes and how they fit together. But we talked about that a little bit. The big thing that's sort of new is how we want to get vectors to fit together as tool paths. So aside from object to path, we need to think about paths and tool paths a little bit. But before we do, it's good to step back and think just a bit more about computers. And the big one is Wysiwyg or Wysiwyg. I've heard people pronounce this different ways. But what you see is what you get is a really important computer concept. When they were first imagining what computers could be, they put the monitors up on their sides so they looked like a sheet of paper. They thought people really needed that to interface with a computer the right way, which is kind of bonkers. They were 4:3, which is like the old school monitor size, but tipped up. So they were closer to the size of a sheet of paper. And Microsoft Word is usable by just about everybody, no matter what your background is, because you're typing and it's basically what's going to come out on a typewriter. It's very much what you see is what you get. And that is a really powerful piece of how lots and lots and lots of software works. However, the big follow-up is vector designs are not even close to Wysiwyg. So they are not what you see is what you get. We need to think about vector designs as a series of layers or a series of shapes, paths, and how those all fit together. And so the big thing is that you can have obscured designs that are still there. It's different than a Word document where if you can't see it, you're all good. And it matters when you go to use the vinyl cutter or the laser because it's going to cut the edge of every path. And so even if it's hidden and it cuts it, now you have a hole in your piece where you didn't want it, right? So that's why it becomes a relevant element. And here's a good example. A few years ago, I had some students who really loved this logo for Russia's atomic city, the bear tearing apart the nucleus of an atom. It's a pretty cool logo. They found this on Wikipedia, and they knew how to take an image that they found on Wikipedia and immediately go to the laser cutter. And so they downloaded this, they put it into the laser cutter, and they clicked print. And it looked good at the start because it colors in things first, our particular laser at the time, and then it would do all the vector cuts. And when it did that, all of these ellipses that are the orbits for the electrons, they were complete ellipses that just sliced right through the bear. So it took the entire design that was looking really good and it just cut it to pieces. And so that's the real danger of vectors not being Wysiwyg. Just because they couldn't see it, it was behind the bear, didn't mean it didn't exist and didn't mean the machine wasn't going to cut it. So you have to be careful about how you're layering vectors as we think about the toolpaths that we're going to be using. And it's a little different than building them for graphics. So if you have a lot of experience layering for graphics, that's a really important part of getting good graphic work. Like there's some trickery I did to make a few images in these slides and the next week's slides that definitely require layering. But when you're using vectors for toolpaths, you have to think carefully about where your vectors live and are there any that are overlapping. There's some good tricks inside of Inkscape, like you can do a view, an outline view, and a few other things. But this is an important thing to think about so that you don't just hop in and take an image and immediately cut it. So what are the things you should do instead of just cautionary tales? I would say if you're trying to do a vector toolpath, everything on a single layer is really important. If you have that bear that you know you want to cut away whatever's behind it, clip those paths, cut them out so that they don't extend behind, so they're stopped there. Use the RGB color space is good. It doesn't really matter that much for the vinyl cutter, but when we transition to the laser, it's good if you're already sort of using RGB colors instead of CMYK or any other color space, if you're familiar with those. Think ahead about your settings or colors as you're building your toolpath, as you're building your image. If you can imagine how it's going to get made, it's going to help you design it better. Minimize colors and fades. It's hard to do those. You basically can't do a faded color with a sticker. They're pretty much one color and that's it. Convert text to curves before you do any cutting. So text will be saved as a text object until you convert it to a curve and then a path. So text doesn't necessarily plop in as an easy cut. You have to do a couple conversions for that. Convert objects to vector paths within Inkscape. Minimize the number of nodes, which are the points along a line. So if you have a square, that's definitely got at least 4 nodes, but you can imagine that those would be in the corners. You could also have nodes that run along those lines. And it doesn't usually matter, but oftentimes a machine will want to turn anytime it hits a node. And so it can make the edges a little wiggly. If you can minimize the number of nodes, it generally goes better. Another thing to watch out for is avoiding double cuts. And this is especially true on the vinyl cutter, because if the knife goes through a spot, what you want is a perfect kiss cut where it cuts through the vinyl and not the backing. And if you do a second pass over the same exact area where the vinyl's already cut apart, you're probably going to start cutting through the backing. And so avoiding double cuts is an important piece. We'll see some more of that. But these are a list of things that I would reference if you're looking at what to do and what to avoid. So how do you design for the vinyl cutter? Essentially, the first thing is just to understand what they are. They're just 2D plotters. They're knives that spin freely right here, down in this little tiny knife. These are all the sort of the shank of the knife, and then there's a little drag knife right down there. They just swivel around freely inside these housings, and they just move around however you want. It's trying to do a kiss cut, so it cuts through the vinyl, but not the backing, and you want to keep it from dragging. These have been used for a long time. Before inkjet printers existed, architects and engineers were using them in plotter machines to draw stuff with ballpoint pens. So before we knew how to lay down ink like you can do at home for no problem, that you get an inkjet printer free with a new desktop from Dell or Gateway or whatever it was a long time ago. Those inkjet printers became nice and easy, but before that we had these plotter things, and it was all this technology. So another thing that's worth mentioning within this system is that there is a small cost to making stickers. The material does have a cost. It's like 10 cents per inch, pretty cheap. If you want to make a sticker, it's usually just a couple of bucks, but worth looking at, pointing in here. But once you actually say, like, I want to make a sticker, you start to think about what do you want your design to be. And so on here, I have a series of stickers that go from left to right for like increasingly complicated. It's sort of a rough estimate as you go. And so over here, these big, like the butterfly is easily the simplest of these for simple shapes. You can imagine a knife cutting out that butterfly by just following its border, right? And so it's all one piece. It's one big sticker. There's nothing to remove from the inside. It just works. And the same for this, like, eagle thing up here. The hand is a little bit more complicated because you've got to remove the inside for that sticker to work. And as you sort of trail off, the bat is also pretty easy. You remove the eyes. The lady with the stroller is pretty good, except you've got a little bit to remove here. This should probably be a little further off to the right. But if you get rid of the wires, or the ropes, it's probably not too bad. But as you keep moving to the right, now you've got more things to remove. You've got more detail in your shapes. And then what happens is as you get over here, you start to have separated pieces, right? So you have multi-part stickers where like the eyes and the smiley face aren't connected to anything else. And that becomes a problem. Or like the window here and the rocket ship and the fire are separated. And so you need to start to think about those. Or the alternating parts of the dinosaur or the skull and crossbones, they're all separated. And then over here, you have multiple colors going on, which is its own whole extra piece. So as you move from left to right, you've definitely got some complexity that gets added into these, but it's worth it for us to think about those specifically and how you would build something like that if you wanted to make that into a sticker that you'd put on your laptop. So the real trick is that you can have complex geometry by thinking about the layering system that you're going to use to apply the sticker. And so most sticker applications can require up to 3 materials for the layer. There's a backing in the vinyl. These 2 things are guaranteed to be involved. The vinyl that you're going to cut comes on a backer. And so like here, I've got a black vinyl on top of its white backer. I've removed all of the black vinyl away where it didn't need to be there. And that's the backer that you're seeing that's white in color. The vinyl sits on top of that. But because I want these paw print pads to be picked up with the main paw print, I'm going to use some masking. And here's a former student using some masking on a big sticker so that you can have 2 colors placed on top of each other. Masking is really important so that you can pick up things and transfer them around without losing their relative geometry. So in this case, it's a bunch of text that you want to keep all the letters evenly spaced. You would take the masking, lay it down on top of those parts, and then the vinyl is more stuck to the masking than it is to the backing. But then when you finally lay the vinyl down onto something where you want it to be, it's more stuck to that surface than it is to the masking, which is complicated. But if you were around watching us put together the t-shirt sticker, you saw that process happen. And there's some videos later on of seeing that happen also. But it's really important if you've ever ordered like wall stickers like these to stick up on a wall. And pretty much every place I've moved into that was a rental, there were always stickers on the wall for the past several years. So lots of people have, is my take on that. The stickers you should be able to pick up and place using that masking. So you'll sort of order them from Amazon or get them from some store somewhere. And you'll pull off the backing, you'll have this masking, and you use the masking to sort of sight it into the spot where you want it to be. And it keeps all that geometry together. But if you master that process, you can make some really cool stuff. Like that Homer Simpson is 5 colors laid onto a Chromebook. A kid did, a 17-year-old. So there's a yellow sticker, a brown sticker, a white, blue, and black. And those are just picked up and laid down with their relative geometries all set in place. I think that one looks particularly nice because the Chromebook is actually layering in the dark border, so sort of the animated character. I think it's a good look. And then here's another solution to the same problem of how do you get multiple colors in a vinyl sticker. This student did it by layering the stickers on top of each other. And so in those discussions, I usually think about many things, but you want to make sure that you don't have details that are too small for your stickers. You want to watch out. I'm a big fan of coplanar spaced color, where that's where Homer is. He lives in this space where all the stickers are on the surface directly of the Chromebook, but they're not overlapping and they're not right up against each other. I think when you get to this coplanar adjacent space where the stickers are right up against each other, it's actually really hard to not have them overlap a little. And then they look really bad if they overlap a little. So if you can avoid that, it helps a lot. But stack layers also work just fine, where you can put the green lantern symbol on top of just a black circle, and it can come out really nicely. The other upshot of this is that then you've essentially got one sticker that you're applying, just one circle that you smack down somewhere, and it's good to go. Because the green vinyl is permanently stuck to the black vinyl once it makes contact. So these things all work out really nicely. There's definitely some strategy to how do you want your multicolor sticker to work. And so we're going to look at several of those things. A big one is that you want to have registration marks. And so if you're cutting out stickers, like if you want to cut Buttercup up here, registration marks like this can be really helpful if you have all of these different colors that you want to place. So Buttercup is one of the Powerpuff Girls. I don't know if you're a kid of the late 90s, early 2000s, but this was totally a cartoon character that I enjoyed. She has only 4 colors in her. And so I envisioning making her as a sticker, here's the black backer that would cover the entire character. Right? It gives you all of that border, so you could set her onto a green background, a black background, a white background, whatever, it wouldn't matter. That's one cohesive part of a sticker to put together. And then here's sort of her green parts, the skin colored parts, and the white parts all mapped out. The registration marks are cut into each one of them. They're blue up here just to have them, but they're cut into each one so that in theory, you lay these rectangles on top of each other and everything else should be lined up as well. So those stay consistent in every single cut. So you can lay those down first and then get the rest of it to stick. And it should, if all the corners are aligned, be in good adjustment. I do spread them out. So I want them to be way over here and way over here, because if they're off by a tiny angle, it will play out a big noticeable effect across the body. And so that's something that you want to think about. Sometimes I'll put these on and then have the best intentions for them and then sort of abandon them halfway through and say, like, I could line it up better by eye and just go with that. But in theory, this should work really well every time. There's certainly an art to sticker application. And so keeping that art piece in mind is really important. The one way to remove that art is actually with something that's kind of shown down here. This is a different material than we can do it in. But another way that you can make stickers is something that's ordered. And so like I have a few stickers that you would buy printed. Here's this metadata sticker that Steve has on his laptop. And those stickers are printed and then cut. And those are done with a whole different process. So there you get multiple colors because a printer has printed on the color onto some sticky surface, and then the machine cuts it out afterwards. And you've definitely gotten sticker sets where like you can see, oh, the print is bleeding over and then they made these cut lines. And that has to be done with a set of registration marks. We have a machine downstairs that will help you print the registration marks, design in the registration marks, then you can print them on the large format printer, and then you can cut them on the vinyl cutter. It's a process that I have done with Kate one time. It was successful. I don't know how we did it. I can't really walk you through it. I wish I could, but it is possible. In this case, it definitely looks like for these bottom ones, they would have printed past the border they intended to cut and then do the cutting after. But you can get really nice professional looking stickers that come out as a result of that. So this is something that's totally worth understanding if you wanted to make nice, high quality printed stickers without the nonsense of like, how do I line these up, and then go through the artistic skill of applying them so they all fit together. It is printed on the sticker then, and then you have the registration marks software process to go through. Whereas here it's a little bit more hands-on, and the color is an inherent part of the vinyl, not something that's printed on top, right? So there's costs and benefits to these two ways to get registration marks to work. This is a lot of software work and it looks really nice, but it's not all the way through the sticker. This is all the way through the sticker and definitely further removed from the software. It's sort of almost a kludgy way to get it to work. You're just sort of muscling your way through getting it to line up. But they both work really well. So as we're thinking about this, you don't really need to worry about registration marks until you get over here onto the right, where Marge is maybe 4 colors, white and yellow and black and blue. This Spider-Man sticker is also 4 colors, white, red, black, and if you imagine that's just sort of straight black for the spider web, and then blue for the city. This is just 2 colors for this haunted house. I would definitely do this as red on top of a black sticker. That would be the easiest way to do it. Tux the Penguin would be yellow and white on black, I think, if I were trying to do that. And the sword is just sort of slapped in there as like, that would be really hard actually to pull that off successfully. You would need to boil this down to just the colors that you want to have and really try and fine tune that process to make it work. But those are all sort of processes, whereas registration marks don't matter. If you're just trying to do one bat and you just want to have the eyes weeded out and you apply it, like you don't have to think about any of those registration mark pieces. So as you're thinking about what you want to do this week, you sort of want to think about how much you want to level up your sticker game. Where on this weird spectrum that is not quite linear do you want to go? Do you want an all-in-one sticker? Do you want to have a lot of detail, which can make it hard to do? You want a multi-part sticker where you must have a masking? If I was applying this bat sticker, I don't think I'd even use a masking. I'd just pick it up and plop it down somewhere. But for the paw print, you definitely need a masking to keep all of the paw pads consistent in how you're going to apply it. I mean, you could freehand it, but I would totally screw it up if it was me. Then these multi-layer stickers, there's some orchestration that's going to have to happen for you to get that to work right, but they can be really, really rewarding also. So it's totally worth it in a lot of cases. Other things that are important, it is possible to get adhesive vinyl lettering, which is a really fun trick for the vinyl cutter as well. And like little league names and numbers, that's adhesive vinyl lettering. If you're going to do that, which is a great trick to pull, it's masking still helps for that because you've got the shape, but you'll probably need to flip it. And so you have to cut the inverse so that you're getting the vinyl stick to go on the way you want. And so you'll have to read the instructions for the specific thing, but most of the time the masking on adhesive vinyl for fabric, the masking is on the front side of the vinyl and the sticky part is up so that you can iron it on and then pull the masking off once it's been ironed and placed. The backing is also sort of your masking in that case. So it's a really interesting piece. It works really well. It's used all the time by t-shirt shops all over the place. You could make your own fun softball team shirts if you wanted to. Like there's a lot of potential here, but it's got some complexity to itself, but you can totally make it with the vinyl plotter. So how do you actually do this cutting? If we're talking about these concepts, these shapes, these ideas, what is it that it takes to get this software to work? And this is where I think it helps to look at a specific example of something to really imagine it going through this process. And so the first thing, we're going to make Bulbasaur up here in this example, which is a real sticker I really have at home. And so Bulbasaur as a piece of fan art, Bulbasaur here, I worked through all this process. So I found an image. Typically having like heavy, thick lined cartoon characters works really nicely for this. If you want to have a detailed first run, that's what I would go for. Usually you want to start off with some image that you've either designed yourself or that you found and is very simple. And you're going to go through a bitmap to vector process. Between Inkscape, Corel, and Adobe Illustrator, Illustrator is hands down the best at that. Going from a bitmap to a vector, no competition. But the other two do it pretty well. I would say the next best is Corel, which we have access to downstairs, and then Inkscape can totally do it, but it's a little clunky, but it completely works. So any of those are totally possible and worth looking at, but really find some bitmap that you want to process and then go through it from there. So this is what the sticker looked like. And here it is set in place where there's a black backer layer. And then all of these are stickers of different colors laid on top. So this is, I think, 5 or 6 layers of color, 6 layers of color maybe. And I used the letters for Bulbasaur printed over here as guidance. And so this is one of those, that's the backing that it's sitting on. And then all of these were laid down on top of each other. So I took this image. This is the original PNG file. And so I went from there and flattened it through one of those design softwares into just this, into flat colors, got rid of the shading because that would have been a whole other set of colors that I needed to add in. And so there's no shadows on this Bulbasaur. It's been flattened into just a few primary colors that we can work with. And then I was able to separate out those vector shapes and flatten them into single layers. So I had like a red page, this sort of turquoise page, the light blue, the green, a black backer for the whole thing, and then white for the claws and the eyes. And each one of them had the name as registration marks. I find that having all those little corners is really helpful to get it extra lined up. It can be useful. And the registration mark is basically the whole height of the character. So it helped a little bit. I also turned it into a PDF. I'm a big fan of PDF for exchange formats between softwares. If you can go back and forth with SVGs, that works fine. But I think that PDF works slightly better. Every so often I've had SVGs go wonky because it's an evolving web standard. And so things change, they handle it slightly differently. And so SVG coming out of Illustrator, coming out of Inkscape, they're not exactly one-to-one, but PDF seems to be slightly better. Is that your experience?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's ways you can cheat around it, but if you're working, with a stacked shape and vinyl, PDF is, because you can go page to page to page, you've got more versatility.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're working with, single shapes, very often it may be easier to go SVG and just give a reference object that you can, oh, that's out of scale, I got to fix everything, versus
right. Yeah,
it's scaled and we're good.
It's definitely something that catches you as a surprise. I think I've trained myself, because I've gotten it wrong many times, to just save both PDF and an SVG. So you've got them both if you've got a design you like, so you can choose either one when you want it. This is also a PDF that's linked in these slides. If you wanted to actually get that and make the same sticker, you totally can. Yeah.
So you're using Bulbasaur as a registration.
Mm-hmm.
Assume you're going to want to assemble the sticker on a masking sheet, right?
Right.
Transferring it to wherever you're going to put it. So those are used to help you register each one as you assemble it on the backing sheet.
Yep. And so there's like a stack of colors on Bulbasaur that are all just layered on top of each other.
Marks will also be transferred to the backing sheet, but then when you go to stick the sticker, you're just not going to stick the registration mark.
Right. I'll just snip those off of the masking so that they're gone, and I don't need to stick that onto the surface.
Possible instead of a word like that you might just make fairly thick, so you have it crosshair in several places.
You totally can. And so going a little further, and actually here, let me hop into this. This is a video of me actually trying to apply that sticker. I would peel this up. So the question, in case you couldn't hear, the question was, what were all the letters used for and how did that work essentially? Here I'd use the letters as the registration marks. And so I'm pulling up the sticker backing there. And so it's a masking that's on the bottom in this shot. And then that's the backing that I just pulled up. The letters are there for registration. And you can see I, in that moment, realized, oh, I should put the masking back, or the backing back under it, so I can line up the letters and get those right before I stick the vinyl to the vinyl. And so using these just to line up the stickers with each other is the best sort of strategy, so that you can get Bulbasaur to be all lined up. I would not apply this. I think in the end on my laptop, I got a Bubba's on the, like a few of the letters I kept, but just arbitrarily. And then you get this to apply, and that helps all of that shape to line up once the masking is gone. But I think I didn't like how that was going, and so I made a change. But so you've made a design, and those registration marks you like, the shapes you like, all of that, you've designed this in Inkscape or Illustrator or Corel. Now you want to actually produce it. You're going to have to choose some software to run the vinyl cutter. And essentially we have two choices. And the one on the left is brand new. The one on the right is the official Sign Warehouse software, LI Expert 12. Is the software that you use, and it's for professional level sign work. It integrates with every one of the features on the Rogue. It's the nice software to use. Don't by any means get me wrong. I'm real excited though about the one on the left, Inkcut, because it's basically upload the file and click print. So it's super easy. It's not got all the features. It's got some quirks to it. Don't get me wrong. But it's nice for someone who just wants, I just want to make a sticker, right? You don't want to go through the details. You're not trying to make it hit a dimension. You're not so worried about all the weed lines and like all the details. Inkcut can be a nice quick solution for people. So either of these will handle these files. You just need to upload them into the one you want to use. So first we're going to go through Inkcut. It is, I think in Mac and Linux, it's an extension that goes into Inkscape, which the name sort of indicates that. But on the Windows machine that we have, it is a standalone. It's written, somebody just wrote it in Python. And so it's completely just a Python program that's running in this terminal window that pops up behind. And then the interface is part of that Python program. So you can't close the terminal window, that would close the whole program. It's pretty janky, don't get me wrong. It's a solution that was put together by just 2 people. And it basically depends on the fact that these are really old technologies that we're using. It uses that HPGL code that plotters were using when inkjet printers didn't exist yet. And so because all of them basically run on the same system, they were able to build this software, and then they've just sort of like added in all the new versions and variants because it's a short push to get to one thing to the other. The HPGL code isn't that complicated. And so it's good to have an interface that works. But here's the black Bulbasaur design. And once you have it uploaded, you can see your graphic size over here. You can scale it, how many copies you want, and send to device is all you need to do. And it just works. It uses the current pen position as the origin of the cut, and the origin is going to be down here at 0, 0, and it just goes. So that's nice and simple. It should work cleanly. There's some materials things where you can put in the size of the material you're working with, the layers. So if you only wanted to choose certain colors, like if we had the design in there and all the colors were on one page, you could say actually, oh, I just want to cut green. I just want to cut red. This software does let you make that distinction. And I'm sure LXI does also. It does. It's just a different way that you get to it. But this interface has only got a few buttons. And I think that it's nice and happy. I'm actually going to roll this out at the high school because I feel like this is very approachable for high schoolers. It's good for high schoolers. It's good for everybody because it's just not too much. LI Expert 12 has expert in the name. So it lets you have all the bells and whistles, all the controls, all the different things that you want to do so that you can make this design work. It's got a couple of windows that pop up, which is tricky, but like here is that printed and registration mark cut sticker. So this is a printed image that was printed on the large format printer and then it was cut out. You can see it, we didn't nail it because like the cutout is a little bit off of the character. There's an offset issue with it, but in general, you can see that it's right there. It's very close to being correct. And that's still on the it's still on the computer that runs the vinyl cutter. So if you dig around on it, you'll find it. But this LI Expert software has everything that Inkcut has and a lot more, where you can put in exactly the specifications for how big you want your piece. These red lines here are specified weed lines where it has gone through your geometry and said, this would be the most convenient place for us to pre-perforate the material so that your process of removing everything you don't want is really nice. So LI Expert is actually the much better software to use. It's just kind of a lot for some people, and I want to make sure that you have as many options as possible. So if you wanted to do this print and registration marks game, you have to take your image, go into LI Expert, set up the print there, export it, take it to the large format printer, then print it, then bring it back to the vinyl cutter. It's a whole, you're going to spend an afternoon doing it. It's something that's really nice. But this software is able to coach you through that process and get you there. The software has everything that you might want if you want to make vinyl stickers or if you want to print something and then cut it. So for that reason, it's worth really digging into. And it has its own software tutorials that we're talking about before class started that are kind of onerous, but they cover the whole, it's to get you from nothing. I'm a new employee at a sign warehouse to now I'm able to produce things on a big scale and use all the features of the software. So it is kind of a lot to go through that badging video process, but it really works out nicely in the end.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Can you get LXI Expert like as an open source software? Like, kind of download it?
It's super mega expensive.
It's like only at that one computer that's attached to the vinyl cutter can we play with that software.
Right. I mean, I think do you have any guess for how much it costs?
I think it's only packaged with the equipment.
Oh,
But so it's sort of everything for everyone in the sense that you can do basic layout in the front end of it,
Okay.
right? So if you just really quickly want to make jerseys for everybody on a baseball team,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily have to make that file at home. You can go in and Corey, Adam, Jane, and do those right on the fly.
Got it.
And then it kicks over to kind of the driver software, where you're fine tuning your settings. Where it really takes off is anytime you're starting to do multiples of an object, like especially if it's something that you want to monetize, because it gets into a lot of sort of hyper optimization of space. And so if you're doing 10 and you place them poorly, it could end up costing you twice as much in your vinyl consumption if you dialed it in with that.
Yeah.
And really, save yourself on feet and feet of vinyl at a time.
Got it.
yep. And like for Inkcut, it just lays them in a straight line. So if it's gonna completely use the most money in trying to do it. If you want to optimize your vinyl costs, LXI Expert 12 is the much better choice. So thinking about those and how you balance between those two driver softwares is an important part of the dynamic. But it's the interface that's going to get you from your vector design software where you're drawing these things into how you're producing them and then applying the stickers. And so this, like we were looking at, this has got sort of an art to it where you get all of these things lined up, and then you can lay them down. But how you do that is tricky. Using LXI to make sure, which is how I made this one, so that you've got the same exact size for your sticker. If you can imagine, if I printed the green and it was twice as big, the whole thing doesn't work. Even if it's 10% bigger, it's still not going to look right in the sticker. So you have to have some consistency in those pieces as you're doing it. You can see I almost get all the green up without having applied it, but I applied that first little bit. And then I pulled up all the registration marks. It takes a lot of skill. This was going to be a, please record this so it goes well. And then in the video, it didn't go as well as I was hoping. So for this, getting all of those steps to work just right is something that's going to come with practice. It's not going to be something that works perfectly the first time. However, there are some processes that work really nicely. I'm a huge fan of putting a pen in the vinyl cutter. And so in the one downstairs, it's got a cap. So you can't put the tallest pen in the world in there. But if you take a pen and wrap it in tape, it will fit in where the knife is. And then it's going to do all the same things that the knife does, but with a pen. So you can draw, here's the vinyl cutter with a pen in it, drawing a pen, which is pretty meta. And I liked that a lot one day in December 2020. That's where we were. This is really great for line art across the board. So if you have contour drawings that you want to have done with a particular pen, you can totally do it this way. And it works out really nicely in very much the same way that architects and engineers were using these plotters at their first use. Couple things that are worth looking at. If you're going to use like printer paper, which is what this was, it's hard to see on the TV, but there's some gummed up marks here where I just did the paper straight into the machine. The rollers that help the paper move back and forth, they're textured. And so that textured roller grabbed into the paper and sort of ate it up a little bit. I think if you taped it down to a backing, it would work really well. That's a lesson from the Cricut. We also have a Cricut. Those have backings every time because they have the same exact problem. We don't have any of those backings for our Cricut. We just looked for them this afternoon. It's the crafters love the Cricut. They sell them at Joann Fabrics. They're really nice. I have heard. I've never successfully run one. Yeah, there you go. That's and Cricut is great. I feel like Cricut is really good at trying to sell you designs. And I was just playing with their app. You don't have to buy their designs and use them. You can totally upload your own, but that is not the primary or secondary looking option on the machine or its software. They are trying to get you to pay $2.99 for the fun sticker, and it's exactly the right way to monetize sticker making. But yeah, right. Yeah, the Cricut is actually amazing because of how quickly it's ballooned into a huge user base. And so it's got lots of value there. I was sort of joking with Lior that I don't want to have any backings for the Cricut because I want people to use the plotter, but we're definitely going to try and get some backings for the vinyl cutter or for the Cricut because we should have it and we should be using it, right? It's totally a great machine that works like a charm. It's got a pen holder and a knife holder, so it's really good at doing both of those things. And it has a sight, so I think you can print and cut with registration marks on the Cricut. For the one that we have downstairs, is that in all of them? Do you know? All of them do it. Yeah. Yep.
What's the difference in the end result?
She downstairs is a better like machine and it can do more on it and like the Cricut is limited. It's like at home, like
The Cricut's 12 inches by 12 inches. It's a size as the. Oh, well, there you go. A 36-inch long thing. Yeah, the Cricut, you're essentially restricted by the size of the mat because you need the mat to get it to roll through the system right. Versus the one downstairs, you can buy 1,000-foot roll of vinyl and just start printing. Which is actually fantastic to buy one of those. If you have to make a giant sign, like you think about the signage that goes up into a school gym, that's cut on one of those vinyl cutters like you have downstairs.
And is there matte vinyl in? I know it's all shiny stuff, but you know, an option.
There's the shiny stuff, there's the flat colors, and I've really only ever used for any real purpose the plain, like slightly shiny, but like black, red, green, you know, the colors that would go in a school, right? And it's because I work in a school, but those vinyl stickers can get you a long way. On the back of every, you know, like all the stickers you see on the back of cars that are just like the stick family or like the zombie, you know, like with the mom and dad and dog and kids and whatever, those are all vinyl cut stickers. That's exactly what it is, which you could totally do on the Cricut if they're small enough, or you can cut on the big one. And then you can play the Tetris game to optimize your vinyl. You could cut, you know, if you're thinking about how many linear inches by being wider, it's a lot less linear inches you might need to make the same cut. So all those different features you'll want to take into account while you're thinking about how you want to produce it. And the big machine has got, the real win is the size, but then there's also that it can apply more force. It's got probably approximate precision. I feel better about its belt drive than the Cricut's belt drive. I was looking at our particular machine and I want to like tighten up the slack in its belt, just from having built other machines. But they're essentially the same. It's like big brother, little brother. And so that's what you're looking for.
I would like for like thinking cards or like trying to think like small frames.
Mm-hmm.
So you have ironable stickers.
You can get all types of vinyl. This was like called 143 vinyl that had like puffer vinyl that you could use and like you put a little bit of heat on it and it like does like the puffy letters. There's glitter vinyl, there's like etching vinyl, like there's all types of vinyl that you could like. Yeah, I think that would actually work in the machine downstairs. They have that site has like different sizes besides like the Cricut.
And it lasts in the laundry, okay?
Maybe, yeah, don't buy Cricut anything. No, their vinyl sucks. It's so bad.
And I think that kind of gets at one of the other concerns is how you feel about corporate, you know, oversight of what you're doing. A couple of years ago, Cricut made moves to limit the number of uploads you could do without paying a subscription fee. And they very quickly reversed themselves when their user base got upset. But when you see a corporation getting involved, that scares, you know, a lot of people who are using it for revenue generation. They don't want to be
Control.
limited. Yeah.
Yeah, the pay-to-play game is fine if it's like $1 here or there for a craft or a hobby, but if you're trying to build a sign business, that's a hard pass. And so those are the sorts of things that it's worth looking at and thinking about as you're trying to decide between the two. But there's some pieces that are really, really equivalent. And if you're just doing little test cuts, it can be useful to have either. If you were already thinking, I might want to buy a Cricut anyway, and then learning how to use the Cricut here so that you have it, or so that you can buy it and give it to a family member and then show them how to use it, that could all be really valuable. I was on the phone today with mom because the holidays are coming, and she's like, I'm thinking about getting a Cricut. Cool. And so those sorts of details, like it's useful for me now to know how a Cricut works, even though I'm better versed in the other system. So is it for like wood veneer? That's awesome.
Like the maker, like you could put ink to foil things on it. Like it has different pens you could put inside of it. I mean, I like my Cricut. I'm definitely the corporate bullshit. Absolutely.
That's right.
Trying to figure out if it be like jailbroken and they pull something else.
Oh, I think that absolutely Cricut is like ripe to break into the software. There's got to be, I would be shocked if it used a different code system than HGPL, than the same system as everything else. They just have the pipeline locked down for this is the software. You don't need to have thought about any of the technical things. They make it really simple, which is really great, actually. Like I'm super happy that they made it so accessible. It just gets tricky, and we have access to the nicer machine that's like more technically powerful. So that's the thing. It just like grinds my gears just a little bit when you open the software and like $2.99 everywhere. Yeah, you have to skip through multiple things on Cricut to get to where you upload your own design, so that you don't accidentally like try and buy somebody. I'm sure that somewhere you could have preloaded in a credit card and then it's just one click and you bought it. Would be my guess, right? It's got to be that sort of easy. Yeah, it probably is. Which is like good on you for making money, but that's not often how makers want to do their thing. So let's say you have a pen in either machine. Here's some really cool stuff that you can do. You can take, this is essentially just a sticker drawn from a line drawing. So not exactly the same pen here, but you can imagine if this was a sticker, those could all be little vinyl cuts, and you'd have all these little vinyl islands that you'd have to pick and place and put together. It would actually be kind of a nightmare to do that as a sticker, but with a pen drawing it, it's kind of a fun shading effect that works really well. Another thing that works really nicely is to do this effect where like, here's the outline of Connecticut that I had as one vector shape. And then I use that as a mask to cut a whole bunch of lines. And so those are straight path lines that don't actually, they're separate from each other. You can only it's just sort of an optical illusion that Connecticut is there because the lines stop and start in exactly their end shape. But that could be just a pen drawing where a pen traces out each one of those and you get the shape drawn. So pen plotters are really cool ways to do things, but you have to think about only using the stroke instead of the infill on any of your shapes. So it's definitely sort of a mind warp to get there, but you can get some really cool effects if you use that really nicely. Also, this works for the laser, this pattern infill thing, if you're savvy at it. So how does this work? If we're taking this idea of like vectors and things, we're going to pull it into the water jet also, because it's a short push to get from the vinyl cutter to the laser to the water jet. And the water jet's a good addition. So this is essentially the same. It's still got vectors as tool paths. It's not got anything different. You can't do three-dimensional work on the water jet. And so here's just a bracket I was going to cut out last year at some point. And so this bracket is just a series of vectors that are all designed and cut their way. It's pretty much the same. It's got a design space and a cut space. A lot of like LXI Expert has two softwares to make it work. Omax, which is the software for the water jet, works mostly the same way. This is slightly different in that you have like a lead in time and a lead out time for the water jet cutter. And beyond that, it's pretty consistent. You take a vector in, you cut it, and that's it. It has to think about the time that it takes to do the cut because it only cuts at one rate. And so the speed that it moves forward determines how it cuts through the material. So if you're cutting through really thin sheet metal, like Annie's project with the brass sheeting, that would have happened really fast. If you're cutting through 1/8 inch plate steel, it's going to be a lot slower. And you can definitely cut through inches thick on the water jet. It's just going to take a lot of time. So this software helps you with all of that because of the weirdness of going from the design to the actual cut process. But it's the same sort of 2 software stack to get from design to making it. And so with that, really, the water jet cutter is just water and sand, and that's it. There's no secret sauce to it. It's just water and sand at very, very high pressure that eats through pretty much anything. And so here's your high pressure water stream. You have this little hardened tip down at the bottom, and the garnet comes in, and then it mixes together. This tip has to be exceptionally hardened so that the garnet and the water don't cut it up. And so a really hardened material, if you remember from our metalworking, something that's very, very, very hard is also going to be brittle. And so that tip is going to break if you bump it into pretty much anything. If you ram it into one of the clamps holding your workpiece down, it's going to shatter that tip, and those tips are $200. So be careful if you want to use the water jet, but there's some really cool stuff, and I'd say it's worth that risk if you're very safe and conservative with your clamp use. You can make some really cool stuff on the water jet that's essentially the same as using the vinyl cutter, just with much different materials. And so there's a lot of cool stuff that can happen here between using it for metal or glass, or I've seen people use wood on the water jet because then it's cutting and sanding at the same time, which is kind of fun that it's doing both of those for you at once. Well, yeah, that's true. Your wood gets wet, so that may or may not, that might be a problem. You've got to think about, is that good or bad for you? But I've seen some people who are very happy that their wood is with this plywood, so it's going to be fine. They cut out weird like shapes. It cuts it fairly quickly. You don't have the detail limits of an end mill. It's a what situation is best for you sort of thing. But it's definitely cool. The problem is that this garnet is a consumable and it eats up tons of power. So this has more of a cost to use it. So you want to plan for that. If you're going to do something, you probably want to think about how much is it going to cost you as you do it. And there's there's a log and a process that you fill out. Badging for this is about as long as badging for the table saw. So be ready to be there for a little while if you wanted to do this. But it's really cool. I mean, like here are water jet projects. This is how custom countertops get cut, right? You have a big slab of marble or granite or whatever, and it's cut with a water jet to be the shape. You can do sort of graffiti subway tiles if you pop art sort of things like that are really cool. Stone inlays in floors or incredible stonework like that can be really cool done stuff. You can cut through glass, marble, ceramics. I don't know why you'd cut through an apple, but you totally could, whatever. You can cut through all those different things. One of the pieces that we're going to start to see as we think about the water jet cutter a little bit more, we'll go through this next week, is that all the pieces get cut and separated there. The backing on the vinyl cutter holds it all together, but the water jet doesn't have a backing. So at that point, now the pieces are going to fall apart. And you have to start to think about an element that we'll introduce more next week when we talk about the laser, about having islands in your cuts. So like the center of an O will fall out. The same is true here. If I was cutting out this like circle, it's weird that it's not falling out. They must have some sort of a backing there, but that circle might fall through if you didn't have something behind it, or like in between these parts of the shopping cart, those would have definitely fallen out and fallen into the water jet cutter. So thinking about islands and work holding is definitely an interesting piece as you think about the water jet cutter, but it's useful. In order to solve that, you usually have tabs. And so little tabs like this interrupt the cut, and you just add in a few to hold things stable. And this is something that we'll see repeatedly throughout our time talking about CNC machines, but tabs like this are really helpful to hold things together. The water jet, especially for metal cutting, you don't need a lot of them just to hold the pieces together. And a couple will go a long way, so that you're like the center of this otherwise would fall, and it would fall into the water bath on the water jet cutter. If you've ever stood near it, it's pretty grody. I do not want to stick my hands in there. And so tabs will keep you from having to try and fish out any part that you want. Yeah, then once it's done, you just cut the tab, grind it flat, and then you're good to go. Then you probably, if you've ever put together like a plastic model, all the sprues and whatever, those are all tabbed together for the injection molding. But if you're putting together like a little plastic tank, you have to twist them and pop them out. And all those tabs are just sort of part of assembling a lot of different types of models.
Glass.
That is a hard one. For glass, I've seen a lot of people just say like, I want to make sure that the part I'm keeping is what's going to stay on the surface and the waste is just going to go into the bath. And so sort of managing it that way is something that you can do, putting a backer so that the backer will hold it. When Kate was cutting a lot of glass, she put it on top of metal slabs so that she could hold the glass sort of to the metal slab, and between the sides being there and the metal or the stone beneath it, it wasn't going to fall through completely.
I'll cut the metal too.
You adjust the rate that it cuts at. And so if it cuts fast enough, it goes to the glass, but not the backer. You can sort of do that. It can still, like, if enough water gets under there that it blasts it up, it can still go awry. So it's not perfect, but it is got some workable solutions. Tabs are the nicest way to do it. And tabs in metal, super easy breezy. Because you twist and cut and then they're gone.
Line it on the grid in a way that if it cuts through, it's not gonna fall in.
Yeah, that's especially if your cut's bigger and you can cross a couple of those pieces. And in bigger, heavier pieces, like, you probably don't need to worry about any of it. It just sits on the grid and that's it. It'll just stay there.
Okay. You can switch the, like, stop the cut, switch the side of where your like vices and grips are, so that it holds on to the part that's gonna fall off. And then cut next to it, and so that now it doesn't fall. But then, it would have hit your grip, but then you switch it the other side and it cuts through there, and then you hold up. And like,
Don't move it in the meantime.
yeah, and then don't move anything else in the meantime.
Sort of like rock climbing. You need to have a few points of contact. Always have two places. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, those are all good strategies to think about if you're doing the water jet and trying to nail it for that process. Hopefully your first projects are just like cutting the butterfly sticker, the one in the bottom left, that's nice, easy shave. Don't do the fancy stuff on the first pass. I promise it won't go as smoothly as you think, from having done that many times. So always give yourself the freedom to have some nice, easy wins at the beginning, because you'll want them. So what are the things that we want to really do this week? Mostly we want to get badged is the first thing. Then we want to design something with vector software, whichever one you like. It's totally fine. And then cut something on the vinyl plotter. That's our main goal for the week. And so we're all going to be trying to get one badge, essentially, is the vinyl badge. So that's going to keep Steve very busy. Yeah. So thank you for helping out. And so if you're doing that, you can totally go for it. The next one we're going to do is the laser. And so if instead you wanted to try and get laser stuff done and then swap back and do the vinyl, there's no problem with that. If you wanted to do them in the exact opposite order, so that if you think about all the people in the class, you're sort of in the opposite of a traffic jam, going against traffic might be a good strategy if you wanted to do that. But it's good to get in on these 2 or 3 machines to get your experience. Get thinking about how do you do 2D cuts and how do you make things happen. But the goal would be to get badged on one of the 2 machines, the vinyl or the laser, or one of the 3 machines, vinyl, laser, water jet. Design something in your vector software, and that could totally be your original maker's mark that we did at the very start, where you had that logo that you like. You could totally just make that, and then cut something. Could be a simple sticker, could be a multi-part sticker with masking, could be a bunch of colors. You could do the pen plotter. You could do any other machine if you wanted to, but just the hope is that you get in, you get designing, you get making, and you're starting to use these digital fabrication machines. This is a real shift. If we're to take this whole section of the course, we've started to hit a different turn. Our first bit, everything that happened before Thanksgiving, I would say, is sort of introductions to all the different areas. And now what we're going to get into is the digital fabrication portion. So this is where really you're going to let the technology inform the machines to make the cuts and things that you want. And so we're going to be sort of in this digital design space for several weeks, where you're doing design work and then that produces something. We're going to do 2D first, which is our vinyl and laser and the water jet. Then we're going to scale it up into 3D. So right around the new year, we'll be doing 3D modeling, 3D design, 3D printing, and some of those things, which is a lot of fun to add in that third dimension. And then we'll be bringing that back together and sort of buttoning this up. This stepping back and thinking more about the class as a whole, there's going to be a couple things that pop up in the schedule that are different this time around than the last one. And that's because now we're sort of in it, right? We're here, we've been doing this for a little bit. There's a wild card week that's going to come right at that, right in the Christmas, New Year's week that happens to land right there. I think they both fall into one of our weeks. It's like Saturday to Saturday or something. And so, and happy Hanukkah to anybody who's celebrating that over this week. But those all happen in there. So we have a wild card week. So if anybody's traveling or New Year's or whatever, you need a break. There's going to be a week in there where it'll just be time to practice. And it happens to be, we put 3D modeling in there because we found last year that if you haven't ever turned on a 3D modeling software, it's kind of a lot to hop in and get started. So we wanted to give an extra week with that stuff to make sure that you had a moment to get started with it, because it's not something that you're going to master in a week. But it's really cool. And then at the end of this section, which is in mid-January, I think, when we get past the 3D modeling, we're going to have a summarizing project where at the end of these like laser, vinyl, 3D modeling, some of that stuff, we would like to have everybody just get creative and use anything that we've done up until this point and find some creative project that you want to make that just integrates these skills together. So something that laser cuts, and maybe you have laser cut pieces that fit together with 3D printed parts that sort of click together. Maybe you have fun stickers and then you put them over shapes. There's all sorts of, or maybe you make something in the metal shop and then you 3D design something and model it and make that added into metal working processes. Could be anything. Whatever you want to do, there's no guide rails on it, but you'll have about a week and it'll be towards the very end. I think that's actually Martin Luther King week, which is early February, I suppose. So that is where we're headed. That's the long term for the next like 7-ish weeks. I think this is 7 weeks. If you happen to know, you have the calendar up. But somewhere in there, we have all our details worked out. So this should, in theory, be, we're sort of building towards that. And I wanted to say that early so that you can be thinking about what creative thing do you want to do. Totally, you can use inspiration from online. It doesn't have to be original idea. We're not saying that. It's awesome if it is. But if you find something really cool that integrates a lot of processes, go for it. There's tons of cool opportunity in there for you to get better by following somebody else's example. That's not what you're trying to do this week. Here, we just want you to turn on the vinyl cutter and make a sticker. So you don't need to take on all of that right now. It's good to have a couple weeks for that to marinate and think about it. And then we can build to that as we get towards the end. And I know that you're not comparing, but last year we didn't have those. It's one of the things that we learned by talking to the few other places in the world that do classes like this. Barcelona is a big fan of having these intermittent integration projects because they think that it helps everybody like gel these ideas together better. And they get lots of exciting results. And so we're really excited to see what happens when we get to that point, to see that sort of creative stuff happening.
Barcelona?
Yeah. There's,
Bar?
huh?
Top on Spot?
It's the city Barcelona. Yeah. There's a tiny number of people trying to do classes like this in Fab Labs. And so I got to go to lots of different parts of the world to have these conversations with people trying to do this. So Barcelona, a lady named Luciana in Barcelona is one of the absolute pros who's trying to do this over there. Yeah, it's really cool. And so we're excited to try and do this integration project week and when we get to the end of this in February, early February. So that is our talk on vinyl cutters and the vector software. Next week is going to be all about the laser and sort of more advanced design ideas that go along with that, because there's some quirkiness to the laser that isn't exactly the same as the quirkiness for the vinyl cutter, and then some interesting other tricks that go along with it. So we're going to talk about this this extended into next week. Let's see. I want to pop in to stop the screen sharing and bring this over. And it sounds good. I think that's a very old no sound, so I hope everybody could hear at home. That'd be great. And Yeah, so what we want to do now is our show and tell. Most everybody, I think, made a shirt over the past little while, but it would be really great to hear if you did anything else that was fun and makery over the week. Or, you know, how was Thanksgiving? Did you do anything exciting? Did you make a fun pie? I made a beet pie for Thanksgiving. That was really nice. Beets, as in like the purple, yeah, vegetable.
fan.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely a dessert. It's like browned butter and beets. It's really a win. I'm a big fan of the book Sister Pie, and I think you just
Salted maple.
yeah, you made a salted maple pie. So I'm a big fan.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's very good. I will absolutely share anytime. So, anybody who wants to share, all of our people playing along at home have your cameras on. And so I feel like it might be time for the people at home to go first. Alina, you're at the top of the screen. Do you want to unmute and tell us what you've been up to?
Yeah, I also made a pie for Thanksgiving. I made chess pie, which I don't know if anyone has heard of. Maybe Renee, because we're from the same little town in Arkansas, but that's like a family pie that my family always makes, and I have since taken over and made it. But essentially, if you haven't heard of it, it is butter and sugar and eggs in pie. And so it's like vanilla, custardy, warm, like pudding pie. And so that's what I did this week. And then I also, I had a friend from California come and visit, and I was trying to make this before they left, but I didn't quite finish it. I was trying to make a box and then a lid that went on the box that had some stained glass kind of seated in the top of the lid. But my lid and my box are not the same size. So I've got to make a new box for my lid and a new lid for my box. But this is the lid, and I think it turned out pretty cool. I wish you could.
Oh, that looks so nice.
I really like this glass. There's some texture on it that I hope you can see. The glass really is doing all of the work. I just put a frame around it, but kind of a happy accident was when I was cutting out the wood for the frame, I didn't leave enough length for these longer pieces, and so had to cut out little triangle pieces and kind of glue them together. And so it's got this cool design now on the edges. So it's still pretty rough. There's like glue, and I've got to sand it down and make it even prettier, and then build the box on around it. But that's the makery thing that I was doing this week.
Yeah, that and I got to see that. I was lucky to happen to be in at the same time. It looks really cool. It's like a series of triangles down that edge. It's a really neat look. So great work. And I hope the pie was delicious. Yep. All right. Now I've got to get back on it. Okay. Renee, it looks like you are on and your camera's on. You want to go?
Yeah, sure. So for Thanksgiving, I made some scalloped potatoes. We just got a new, really easy to use, oh, I forgot what it's called. It's, what is it called? A mandolin.
Oh.
A mandolin slicer. So that was really fun to use. So just cut all these like tiny little slices of potatoes. It's really cheesy and delicious, but it dripped in the oven, and our oven got very smoky, and it was before we cooked the turkey, so that was quite dramatic. We did end up eating around like 9 o'clock at night, so it worked out, and we didn't set the smoke alarm off, but I was really, really scared that we were going to.
Yeah.
And then as far as makery things, I've been trying to get my screen burned for my t-shirt. So I've been steadily trying to do that. But the last time that I was in, we couldn't get the printer working. And so I couldn't get my screen burned then. And then I was going to go in Sunday, and Bob couldn't make it on Sunday. So we should be meeting up probably sometime this week and then we'll continue probably on that process. So should have some t-shirts coming eventually.
That's exciting. Hopefully, I'm sure that they'll come out great. So that's awesome. Let's see. Norman, you're the next person with a live camera. What have you been up to?
I made chili for Thanksgiving, but it was turkey chili, so it fulfilled the basic requirements. And I did some reading up on Inkscape because I never quite got it in my head the first time round, and I'm trying to get that more settled. Same thing a little bit with Arduino, and of course I made I was part of the group that made the t-shirts. I stole Renee's t-shirt, but was caught and had to return it. But luckily Corey left the proper t-shirt for me, so justice has been done.
Oh, I mean, they all look the same. Everybody brought like a black shirt, and so they were really, really similar. So
Sorry.
Oh, it's all good. We're a big team, so it worked out in the end. The turkey chili sounds delicious. I hope that you had a wonderful time.
Well, I have one recommendation in that is after you've made it and people have eaten, don't forget that it's still in the pot in the stove, because I actually did kind of forget for a while. Not going to get into the details because people aren't going to want to know.
Oh, I've done that to a soup pan before. It's a time. All right. Thank you for sharing. Annie, it looks like you've got a tree up. It looks lovely.
Yes, I do. I'm very excited about Christmas. So it's just ready. And all the house has all the decoration.
Oh, there you go.
I'm a lot crazy about Christmas. Yes, so I made a ceviche for Thanksgiving. It was with the shrimps, mango, avocado, cilantro, and onion. It was delicious, and we were with some friends, and then another friends they came from Ireland, so it was a lovely weekend actually.
Yeah, that sounds like a great time.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and I have been missing all these classes because I've been very busy, so I'm really sad about that. But I think this week I'm gonna be around MakeHaven because I really missed to be there.
Well, happy to have you back, and it'll be fun to make some stickers.
Of course, so. I'm ready.
Yep. All right. We'll see you.
See ya.
All right, and I think that's our online crew, and so now we're here for in person. And with the microphone issues that happened early on in the game, we're going to play the same like musical chairs to share sort of what you've been up to, how it's going. And if you did any, you don't have to, if you don't want to share anything, you don't have to. But whatever you were up to that was makery or baking, I feel like food is a maker way that I can do things at home. And so it's always kind of fun to express that as a group. So we can just go around this way. Steve, you already shared that you baked things.
So baked things and I destroyed things.
Oh, so that's good. All right.
Learning to make by taking apart.
Perfect. Come on up.
So I ate at someone else's house for Thanksgiving, so I didn't have to cook anything, but I did make a beef stew and a loaf of bread, and ate too much food for the entire week and did really nothing else. I did some rock climbing. I don't know. That was it. That's all I got. And I have been playing with Inkscape a lot, and learned a bunch of weird, cool things that you can do with it. So that was it.
Cool. Very nice. All right. That's it. Oh, you're gonna present from there?
Yeah, I'll be the one present.
That's totally fine. We can give you a second to do that. Lisa, you want to come to the hot seat? Oh, it should be. You want me to hold it in front of the camera for you?
Yeah.
I gotcha.
So, I don't know if I start with that.
Yeah.
So I was gonna try to make a cutting board just to put into practice what I'd done, and I realized that my wood that I bought was no good. So then I thought, you won't believe how many years ago the pieces to this table my husband and I made in 1987. And we never finished it, and it was sitting in a box. And I said, "Oh, now's my moment to make this thing and finish it." And I went and I put the pieces together,
Yeah.
and they mostly fit. And the one leg that didn't, I went and I sanded it and worked it and worked it, worked it. Finally, it went in,
Awesome.
and I glued it up. And then after it dried, I put tongue oil on it, and I love it.
That's great.
So 2 coats of tongue oil. This is cherry. And the really cool thing is I
Oh,
found some letter
look
and
at
number stamps, and I stamped it with the 2 dates. The first date when it was started, and then my initials on the bottom when it was finished.
that is so cool.
And
I-
it's a here.
Oh.
Well, it's what's called a candle stand. It's a side table. So it's a 3-legged side table.
I genuinely thought it was like a piece of furniture you wanted to make from the photo. Like
No.
I'm super impressed. It looks,
I'm so happy. with
Yeah.
it. And I have another piece of furniture also in the stage where it needs to be put together and finished, and I'm gonna do that too.
that's really cool. Yeah, turned out great.
Yeah.
What a fun look.
Yeah, so as far as Thanksgiving, this was a year where various family members decided we're not gonna go to a big gathering, but instead we convened in North Adams, Massachusetts, and stayed at an inn, and went to a restaurant for dinner and had the worst meal I've ever had, just that night. And then the other nights were wonderful. And we went to Mass MoCA, the Museum of Contemporary Art. And then we went to the Williams College Museum of Art. We did a lot of art. But to break it up, we played candlepin bowling. And it was it was the best. So that's what we did.
It's tons of fun.
Yeah.
What a fun weekend.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Vincent, you ready? Yeah, let me turn my mic off and you can turn yours.
All right, can everyone hear me? Whoop. Okay, how about now? Okay, great. Share my screen. Desktop 1. Okay, so for Thanksgiving, I helped put together a charcuterie plate. You can't really see all of it because that wasn't the main reason for me to take this photo, but you can see it on the side there. I didn't help make most, well, I helped make most of it, but I didn't like make it. I pretty much was just like, what can I do? So I'm not just sitting on the couch.
That always helps.
I did mix all the cocktails though. I made something up because I looked through the book and I was like, you don't have this, you don't have this. Don't feel like making that.
Mixing the cocktails is one of the most useful parts of the holiday. Absolutely.
And we were like, it was like a 2-day thing. So we were going to just prep everything the day before and then eat the next day. So it was like cocktails 2 days in a row. And I was like, you know what? We haven't had enough water. Let me go get some White Claws.
Oh boy, that's fun.
Yeah, so that was Thanksgiving. Me rushing before Thanksgiving was practicing with Inkscape. You can't see it. I don't have it here, but I made a logo, just like a circle with like text and whatnot.
Cool.
So that might be something I'd want to play with for the stickers. I'm not sure yet. This is the shirt because I forgot that I had to bring my own shirt. I thought it was bring your own shirt so that way you could compare like what shirts are there and get the right size, and I forgot that part too. I found out I need to use a heat gun, and I eventually found it, but only after I found this thing, which is not a heat gun.
Well, it's a smaller heat gun. It
Totally would deliver heat.
And it was at the same station too, so I was like,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
doesn't look right, but yeah.
Yep.
Finished up this bag.
Yeah.
Oh, it's making me select. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, the bag is really nice.
Thanks. So if I practice some more and get better at it, I'm probably going to want to make another one. Did a little bit of 3D work. Whoops, why isn't it? Okay, good. Or not, why is it not updating? Oh, it must be lagging a lot.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, okay. So this is one of the models I was working on, the snail thing again.
Cool.
I used Mesh Mixer and Blender. First I learned it in Mesh Mixer, then I tried learning it in Blender to separate out some of the pieces, so that way I could print this out in resin to be stronger, and then make an octagon shaped pin, like an alignment pin that I'd be able to attach the two pieces together for when I glue it up, so that way it stays square. And hopefully it'll be strong enough. Probably will be. I'm pretty much just printing it, seeing how it goes. And let me see. It looks like we're halfway done. I'm going to find out maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, how it turns out.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and I love that the Formlabs gives you live web updates. You can check and see how it's doing while on, like, without needing to be on the Wi-Fi of MakeHaven. A person in Foundations last year, Ada, would print out stuff that would take 36 hours. And so she'd start to print and then like be able to check up on it, make sure that everything's going smoothly and she didn't need to like come clean a crash or anything. I think you can also check and see if it's being used and it's not. So like you can check even if it's not your print. So you can say like, oh, they're going to be done 8 hours from now. I can come in 10 hours from now and I should be able to get a print done.
Yeah.
So that's super nice feature of the Formlabs printer. Awesome. I hope that it comes, that it works great.
All right, thanks.
I think it should. It looks like that's a smart move to make sure that you can print that, you can have the strength you want, and then get it all
to align just the right way.
Yeah. And I'm kind of running out of time for when I wanted the whole thing done, so I might print the whole thing in resin anyway, but I'll see how this goes.
Yeah.
And if there's one piece is strong enough in resin, then I'll print the whole thing, no problem.
There you go. Then it should work.
Yeah, it's always good to have delivery times.
Delivery dates. Awesome. Cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Sinem or Arvia, either want to go? Yeah, great. Okay.
Hello. Let's see. Let's start with Thanksgiving. All right. This Thanksgiving, I was busy getting old. It was also my birthday. So I am now an old person. That's okay. Thank you. I'm also from Turkey, which is funny because for Thanksgiving, because I can't go home, I don't usually do turkey dinner, but I make Turkish dinner. So kind of what I did. I made some zucchini fritters, but also another friend joined me, so we made some pot pie for the American parts of it. So that's what we decided on doing. It was a good time. And as my birthday gift, I got tickets to an NBA game, my first NBA game. So I was in Brooklyn Nets versus Suns game this Saturday. So that was a good time. In terms of projects, I'll admit these last couple of weeks got away from me really quickly. So I decided, new age, new page. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna kind of start. I realized like it would stress me out too much to try to catch up. Aside from some things that I might need in the future projects, I think I'm gonna be, taking this as a fresh start. Moving. We'll see.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. That sounds fun. Turkish dinner. I'm a big fan of the Fresh Start model, and then we have our RV. You can hop in here next if you want. The wildcard week is another great time to get caught up on things. So if you wanted to do, depending on what's going on, you can hop in that way. All right, there we go.
Yeah, same. I feel like these couple of weeks have also gotten away with me, but for Thanksgiving, I made a banana pudding for the first time. Yeah, it was really nice. My grandpa used to make it, but he passed 2 years ago. So this is like our second Thanksgiving without him. And no one's made it since. So I was like, all right, I guess I have to pick up the mantle there. But it was nice. It was also my grandma's 75th birthday. So yeah, so it was really sweet. We got to celebrate her. Um, and well, the thing that I did make yesterday, I got badged on the large printer, and I had made this. Where's the camera? Oh, here. So I had made, I can't tell if you can see it because I don't have my glasses on. I had made this like, I don't know, this graphic with my grandparents when my grandpa had passed. So I just printed this out as my project. And it came out, it was really beautiful. I think I'm gonna give it to my grandma. I don't know where she's gonna put it because she has way too much stuff in her house, but we'll figure it out. And I also made a hat, but I don't have a picture of it. I made a hat, but basically I put some vinyl on a hat. Made a hat that I wanted it to say something. But yeah, also I'm trying to get caught up on all the things. But yeah.
That's a lovely print. I'm very confident Grandma's gonna absolutely love it. That's so cool. Yeah. It sounds like everybody did lots of cool stuff over the fun long weekend, the break week. And I hope that it was, rejuvenating, exciting, nice, good to disrupt the cycle, even if it sort of quickly wisps away. But it's really nice to have those times. And now we're back at it again. So stickers this week. I'm excited to see what happens. For everybody who's physically here, we can go walk right down and crank out a sticker. If you wanted to just like press some buttons, beep, boop, boop, and then make it go, we can totally make that happen. Yeah, that's the story. And so everybody who's not here, I'm intending to be in this week on Thursday and Sunday, just like normal. Maybe tomorrow also. I'm still trying to decide. It's about to be exam week for me, which is a weird thing that it's even relevant, but that means for some reason that I get to leave school at like noon. So I'll probably be here a lot this week. So I might be here more than just the Thursday. On Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, depending on how quickly I can grade teenagers' chemistry exams, I might be here for a lot of the afternoon. Could be really nice. So I will probably see you around, but I'll definitely make sure to be here Thursday evening, Sunday afternoon, just like always, and then probably more throughout the week, like during business hours, sort of more than anything. So yeah, that is it. And it's 8:39. I think we did it, everybody. It's good to see you. Good to be back. And let's go make some stickers. Cool. All right. And for everybody who's at home, have a great week.
Bye, thank you.
See ya. All right.